I will confess to having little to no hope in modern Hollywood to ever adapt anything faithfully ever again at this point. I'm quite over the post-apocalyptic genre. I enjoy it. I enjoy a good post-apocalyptic yarn, but I have to say it's getting a little played out. And so I am no longer on the edge of my seat waiting for the next the world has collapsed storyline to come out. And frankly, it's hitting a little too close to home these days, so I think that might be half of it. Having said that, The Last of Us executes a post-apocalyptic zombie outbreak in one of the most, well, no, I'll just say it, I think it is the most interesting and the most fascinating zombie tale I've ever seen. That was true of the game. A lot of what I know of the game I read about just because I was fascinated by the idea. But the cordyceps fungus idea is lightning in a bottle. The writer who came up with that just hit one out of the park with that. And I will tell you right now, of the 2 episodes I've seen, my very favorite scene is the very first scene. That scene where they're on a talk show in the 1960s discussing the dangers of pandemics, and the fungal expert is the one who basically says, oh, viruses, they're no problem. They could wipe out a third of humanity, half of humanity, but we always win in the end. Sooner or later, we beat the virus. So, yeah, I'm not worried about viruses at all. He's like, oh, so you don't think there's any cause for concern? He's like, oh, I didn't say that. Then he goes into how fungus, should it ever evolve to be able to survive in the human body, is completely undefeatable. Dude, that was creepy and sobering and freaking awesome. And by the way, that is good sci-fi. Sci-fi that makes you think. Like, there's no zombies on the screen, there's no action scenes, there's no shotguns coming out, there's no, doomsday hoarding, there's no raiders, with spiked pauldrons on motorcycles. It's just literally a couple of scientists talking about what's possible. Ooh, and it was good, and it creeped me out, and it cut right to the bone. And I have got to say, I'm like, that is just this side of plausible to me. I don't know about you. One of the shows I quite loved when it began was The Walking Dead. I loved the first couple of seasons of Walking Dead, but then it started to just become the same damn thing over and over again. They meet a group of survivors. Hey, are you cannibals who might eat us? No, we're not like those others, but we're cannibals, and we're going to eat you now. It's like, I knew it. I knew that. I knew you were going to say that. There's only so many times you can watch Rick just get machete revenge on one of the latest savage gangs in the zombie apocalypse before you kind of just get a little bored. And the zombies are so boring. They're so easy to kill now, and I don't care if they can hoard. It's just lame. What I love about The Last of Us is that it's the villain is almost not even the zombies. The villain is the fungus. That is a wicked cool idea. I mean, that is just a really intriguing idea. It's almost like this larger malevolent force, a kind of animalistic intelligence, an instinctive driven intelligence that you're up against. So I really quite like the world that they've created with The Last of Us. Second thing I will say, amazing production value on this show. They did an incredible job of making the world actually look ruined and showing how over years all of these ruins have become overgrown. So what about the characters? I think Joel in the first episode I was not wild about. He seemed awfully passive. YouTuber Melanie Mack pointed out a couple of really interesting critiques about him, that he seemed more taciturn than in the games, apparently, and was much more sort of taking orders and deferring. And I felt that as I watched it as well. That being said, in the second episode, he takes charge a lot more. And him and Tess actually have a really interesting partnership and relationship. So he's a strong hero. He's a strong character. He's a strong masculine character, which I really like. And I really like Tess. And I love the actress who plays Tess. Annie Wershing. She was in Fringe. Man, she was great in that show. But she looks like she's got some mileage in this show. They all do. Like they did a good job of making the characters haggard. I mean, you would be in the post-apocalypse. Oh, one last thing, and another thing that kind of puts to shame The Walking Dead. Even in the early seasons of The Walking Dead, when the characters were essentially less skilled and less experienced in the zombie apocalypse, there were a lot of improbable headshots that they would make on these zombies. The sheer amount of trial and error and effort that it took Tess and, okay, spoiler alert, I'll try to keep this spoiler light. The sheer amount of effort that it took Tess and Joel to take out a certain more advanced zombie in the second episode was incredible. You see them miss shots. You see them fumble to reload. You see them have to run at times because they just don't even have time to reload. It's great. And it shows that there's an actual serious effort and that every zombie is a threat and could be the end of you. The last thing I will say about the episode is there is a particularly hideous moment between a character and a zombie at the very end of episode 2. And when you see it, you will know it because it's the most nauseating thing you've ever seen. And some people have suggested there's no rhyme or reason for this moment in the show. Others have suggested it's simply so hideous, why? I actually just recently read more or less the writer's argumentation for why it was in there. One of the co-creators of the show, Craig Mazin, said they had this question for themselves when they were conceptualizing that moment at the end of the episode. Why are infected people violent? If the point is to spread the fungus, why do they need to be violent? We landed on that they don't. They're violent because we resist. But what if you don't? What does it look like if you just stand perfectly still and let them do their thing? I love this idea. This is a thing I always thought about. I really like that idea, and it sort of fits nature, and it makes it more interesting and nuanced to watch. I don't get the feeling, just watching it as someone who sort of knows about the games but hasn't played them, I don't get the feeling that the spirit of the games is being disrespected, though. I get the feeling that they really appreciate the games. If I could watch this show without the knowledge of what happens in the second game, I think I'd be extremely happy and extremely optimistic because it's one of the best damn sci-fi shows I've seen in a long time. It is certainly the best zombie show I've seen in a long time. It may wind up being one of my favorite post-apocalyptic stories I've ever seen. And Pedro Pascal, I wish he was a little more Texan, just a little more Texas. I wish he was just a little more aggressive. I get the sense he's just a little too passive for me in this. But that being said, his performance is marvelous. Unfortunately, I'm not a fan of the actress who plays Ellie. I think she just does not have the look of the Ellie from the video games. And Bella Ramsey, I find she's got a lot of screen presence. That being said, she just does not put me in mind of the Ellie character from the game. She doesn't sound like her. She doesn't really look like her. And I'm a little bit baffled as to why they cast her in the role. Overall, this is an excellent sci-fi entry into the sci-fi canon. I love that it makes you think and it makes you wonder about things. That has been sorely lacking in sci-fi lately. The worst thing possible for this show is if they do not faithfully adapt the first game, but do faithfully adapt the second game. Either of those two mistakes or both together will sink this show, and it will be a one-hit wonder. But it is nice to have a show to look forward to. After House of the Dragon ended, I wound up in the show hole, so I am cautiously optimistic about the future of The Last of Us. Let's not hope, when it comes to sci-fi drama, that it's the last of those. Make sure to check out my novel series, Blood and Oak. It's available now on Amazon. It follows the sword and sails adventures of Midshipman John Sullivan. When his sister is kidnapped and sold into slavery by the Barbary pirates, this daring young Navy officer embarks on a suicidal quest for rescue and revenge. It's available now on Amazon in Kindle, paperback, and a fantastic audiobook narrated by Travis Baldree. I'm not just giving commentary and commenting on the problems in entertainment. I'm doing my best to be part of the solution, and I would be truly honored to earn your readership and your support. Until then, I say hail to you, hail to the fellowship, and hail to the Iron Age of entertainment.